Welcome to the Ramayana, Stories of Dharm and Devotion. I'm Sandeep, your storyteller, guiding you through the eternal journey of Valmiki's Ramayana. Our narrative draws deeply from Valmiki's original text and is enriched with stories from other Indian traditions, offering you a complete and immersive experience of this eternal tale. In our previous episode, night had fallen, and with it, the hopes of the Vanar Sena seemed to be dim. Indrajit, cloaked in illusion, struck like a phantom and brought Ram and Lakshman down with a web of deadly, enchanted arrows. Two warriors who had lit the battlefield like blazing suns now lay still, silent, wounded, unmoving. Fear swept across the Vanar ranks. Sugreev stood numb. Hanuman trembled, fists clenched. Jambavan's voice faltered. Even the earth seemed to hold its breath. Indrajit laughed. The demons roared. Today's episode begins where Raavan believes that the war was won. And so, in a cruel twist, Raavan sent word to Sita. Not to free her, not to console her, but to show her. He summoned her to the battlefield, not to bring closure, but to break her spirit. He wanted her to see Ram and Lakshman fallen, to believe the fight was over, that dharm had lost. But what Raavan failed to understand was this: faith does not collapse when the body falls. It rises. From within, Ram and Lakshman begin to stir. Their breath returns. Their eyes open. The power of grace, of destiny flows back into the battlefield. With Ram alive, a new fire ignites in the hearts of the Vanars. War begins again, but now with sharper planning, with greater resolve, with a new sense of purpose. The battle cries return. The Vanar Sena forms up. Jambavan, Neel, Angad, Sugreev, Hanuman, every name becomes a force of nature. And Ram rises like a flame denying its sky. Join me now as the war resumes not with despair, but with thunder, with strategies sharpened, and dharm reborn from the ashes. For Lanka has not yet seen the storm it has summoned.
The battlefield lay in silence, not with peace, but with the weight of sorrow. The Vanar warriors stood still, eyes locked on the sight that drained their spirit. Ram and Lakshman lay motionless on the ground, their bodies pierced with arrows, their armor shattered, their breath faint, so faint it could barely be felt. A shiver passed through the Vanar ranks. The two brothers, their leaders, their hope, were down. From within the golden halls of Lanka, Raavan watched with twisted satisfaction. He believed the war was over. He thought victory was his. Raavan stood by his palace window, staring out at the distant battlefield, where smoke still rose and the air trembled with fading echoes of war. His eyes gleamed with cruel satisfaction, but his mind plotted something deeper. Victory meant little unless Sita herself accepted it. He needed her to believe Ram and Lakshman were dead. Only then would her resistance break. He turned to his guards and spoke coldly, "Bring Trechta." Among all the demonesses who guarded Sita in the Ashok Grove, Raavan knew one truth, that Sita trusted Trechta. She was older, calmer, and had once dreamt of Ram's victory. That dream had earned her Sita's quiet respect. And now, Raavan intended to use it. Trechta arrived. Her expression was cautious. Raavan looked at her and spoke slowly, measuring each word. Raavan said, "Go to Sita. Tell her that Ram and Lakshman have been slain by my son Indrajit. Let her hear it from your lips. She trusts you. Then take her to the Pushpak aerial chariot. Let her see the battlefield with her own eyes. Let grief bury her pride. She will break, and then she will be mine." Trechta lowered her gaze and bowed. But in her heart, unease stirred. She had served Sita for months now. She had watched her endure insult and suffering without ever losing her dignity. Something inside her whispered that this was not right. Still, she walked to the Ashok Vatika. Sita was sitting beneath a tree, her eyes closed, whispering Ram's name under her breath like a prayer. When she heard Trechta's footsteps, she opened her eyes gently. Sita said, "Trechta, you look troubled. Has something happened?" Trishta sat down beside her, slowly. Her voice was low, almost hesitant. She said, Devi, I bring news. Raavan claims that Ram and Lakshman have been killed in battle. His son Indrajit used powerful arrows, and the battlefield lies covered in sorrow. Sita's body stiffened. Her breath faltered. What are you saying? Trishta reached out and held her hand. That is what I was told. But I must confess, Devi, that I do not believe it. Not entirely. I have seen your husband's strength. I have seen how the Vanars fight, how destiny surrounds Ram like a shield. My heart does not trust this news. Sita looked at her eyes wide, her voice trembling. Then why tell me this at all? Trishta replied, because Raavan commands it. He wants you to see for yourself. He believes that grief will force you to surrender to him. He wants to break your spirit. But I thought it would be better if you knew what he plans. And better still that you see it with your own eyes. Then your heart will know the truth, not just from words, but from what you witness. Sita fell silent. Her heart was racing, her mind clouded. Fear and faith pulled at her from opposite ends. She said softly, Very well. Take me. Trishta nodded. I will be with you, no matter what we see. Together they went to the Pushpak chariot. Thereafter, the female demons brought the aerial car, Pushpak as per the instructions of Raavan, and carried it nearer to Sita, who was staying in Ashoka Vatika. As the Pushpak chariot hovered above the battlefield, the wind carried with it the scent of blood and sorrow. Sita, held gently yet firmly by the demonesses, stood silently beside Trishta. Her eyes, already hollow with months of pain, now brimmed with dread. Below, the ground was a canvas of carnage of lifeless Vanars strewn across the fields, their once roaring bodies now still. And amidst that silence, her eyes caught sight of Ram and Lakshman. There they lay still as stone, their limbs pierced by arrows, their armor torn, their weapons fallen. They did not move, not a breath, not a twitch, only blood and silence. It was as if the very earth held its breath around them. A gasp escaped Sita's lips. Her hands clutched the edge of the chariot, trembling. Her voice cracked as she whispered, Ram, Lakshman. She fell to her knees and said, Is this how a story ends? Trishta placed a hand on her shoulder, her tone unusually gentle for a demoness. I am sorry, dear Sita. This is what Raavan wanted you to see. He believes that with this sight, your spirit will finally break. That you will surrender. Sita turned, her face streaked with tears. She said between sobs, Then let him know that even if Ram is gone, I will never be his. Trishta looked at her, eyes filled with strange warmth. I believe you, Sita. And I must tell you that though I am under his command, I have doubts. Something in this does not feel right. Ram's time has not yet come. His fire is not so easily extinguished. Sita looked at her through her tears and asked, Why would you say that? Trishta replied, Because you must see them with your own eyes, not from the skies. Let your heart tell you the truth. They ordered the Pushpak chariot to get closer to Ram and Lakshman without letting the Vanar troop know their presence. The Pushpak chariot full of magical powers did exactly that. Seeing what she believed were the lifeless bodies of Ram and Lakshman, Sita was struck by a wave of anguish so deep that even the sky seemed to darken in her eyes. Her heart trembled. Her breath caught in her chest. Tears poured from her eyes like monsoon rain as sorrow took hold of her voice. She whispered through sobs, Were the words of the sages false? They said I would be queen, that I would never be a widow, that I would be the mother of heroic sons. All my life, I was told that the signs on my body, the lines on my feet, the glow on my skin, the strength of my arms, all foretold a life of happiness and prosperity. Were those signs lies? Or is destiny so cruel that it lures one with hope only to strike down the soul in its most vulnerable moment? Her thoughts turned to Ayodhya, to Queen Kausalya, Ram's mother, waiting each day at the palace gate, eyes scanning the horizon, praying for the return of her sons. Sita imagined her despair. She wept for her too. She murmured, "What shall she be told? That her sons lie pierced in a foreign land, far from her arms, in the middle of a cursed war brought upon by my capture?" But before her sorrow could fully consume her, a gentle voice interrupted her despair. Trijta, the aged demoness, looked at Sita with true compassion. Her voice was soft, but steady. She said, "Dear Sita, do not believe your eyes so easily. Those two brothers are not dead. I know grief clouds the heart, but listen to me with care, for I speak the truth, not to comfort you with lies, but to anchor your soul in what is real." Sita looked up at her through her tears, her eyes wide, confused, desperate for hope. Trijta continued, "If they had truly died, the entire Vanar army would be in chaos. You have heard mourning spread like wildfire. But look at them. They are sad. Yes, but they are not broken. Their formation remains, their commanders still give orders, and their eyes are alert, not drowned in hopelessness. Would this be so if Ram were truly gone?" She stepped closer and spoke more gently. "The Pushpak chariot, O princess, is not an ordinary chariot. It is sacred. It moves by divine will. No widow has ever boarded it. If Ram were truly dead, it would never have come for you." Sita's lips parted slightly, the first spark of wonder returning to her. Trijta continued, "And look again. The bodies of the brothers, do you not see how they still shine? Their faces are radiant. Their limbs have not stiffened. Their skin has not dimmed. This is not death, Sita. This is the sleep of warriors, brought on by powerful magic, but not the end of life." Trijta then leaned forward, placing a hand gently on Sita's shoulder. "I have watched you for months now. You, the noble daughter of Janak, have held your ground with a strength none here have seen. Even in captivity, you did not bend. Your love, your faith, your truth, they have made me respect you more than I have ever respected any being, even among my own kind. And that is why I tell you, not as a demoness, but as a friend, to have faith. They will rise. Ram will rise. I feel it in my bones." Sita's breath caught. A small flame flickered again in her heart. She closed her eyes for a moment and whispered, "May it be so, Trijta. May your words be true, and may the gods listen." With those words, Trijta gave the order for Pushpak chariot to turn around. The golden chariot, silent and swift, soared back through the skies, returning Sita and her companion to the Ashoka Vatika. But though her feet touched the ground once more, Sita's soul still hovered over that battlefield. She could not forget what she had seen. The image of Ram and Lakshman, pierced and unmoving, lay heavy on her heart. Even as she sat again beneath the flowering trees, the scent of Ashoka blossoms around her, she remained lost in thought, her heart balancing between despair and the faint, trembling hope Trijta had offered her. Far away, the sun slowly began to rise over the mountains, casting a golden light across Lanka's sky. Somewhere, in the silence of that morning, something stirred. For Ram and Lakshman had not fallen for long. The fire had not gone out, and the battle was not yet over. As the golden hue of dawn spread gently over the blood-stained battlefield, a faint stirring rose amidst the silence. Ram, his breath shallow but returning, opened his eyes. For a moment, he lay still, the sky above him a blur. The pain in his limbs was fierce as his body was pierced by arrows and his armor broken, but none of that compared to the ache in his heart the moment he turned his gaze to his side. There, not far from him, lay Lakshman, still, motionless, his body covered in blood, his chest rising only faintly with breath. At first, Ram called out his brother's name, softly, and then louder, "Lakshman." But there was no response, no flicker in those eyes, no motion of his hand. And at that moment, a wave of despair engulfed Ram. He dragged himself closer, his arms trembling, and gathered Lakshman's bloodied head into his lap. Tears streamed down Ram's face as he wept over his brother's body. His voice broke with sorrow. "O Lakshman, my soul, my shadow, my second life, how could you leave me? I could find another Sita, another queen, another partner in life. But I can never find another brother like you. Never. Ram pressed his forehead to Lakshman's, his voice faltering. How shall I return to Ayodhya now? How will I look upon Mother Kausalya's eyes, or tell Mother Kaki that her son fought and fell for me? And Mother Sumitra, what shall I say to her? That her brave son, born of dharm and honor, died far from home, not for his kingdom, but for his brother's exile? He wiped the blood gently from Lakshman's brow. It was my doing, my exile, my vow, my misfortune, and you bear the cost. Turning to Sugreev, who stood nearby, silent and grief-struck, Ram's voice grew heavy with resignation as he said, Sugreev, great is your courage and unmatched your friendship. You and your warriors, Angad, Neela, Nala, Jambavan, all have stood by me in this hopeless war. I ask you now to go back. Return to Kishkindha. Return to the forests that raised you. Let no more noble blood be spilt on my account. The wind carried his words softly over the field as the Vanar commanders lowered their heads in sorrow. Ram continued, this war is lost. The heavens have written their will, and no force, however brave, can defy destiny. I shall lay down my arms. For what victory can mean anything if Lakshman does not live to see it? But just then, from the edge of the camp, the sound of marching feet echoed. Tall, strong, and dark, with a golden make in hand, Vibhishan approached swiftly. The monkeys, their nerves still raw from the deadly sorcery of Indrajit, looked up and saw the towering demon form. Fear gripped them. One of them cried, it is Indrajit again. He returns to finish what he began. In panic, the monkey ranks broke and scattered in all directions. Some ran for weapons, others for cover. Even the mightiest among them hesitated. Angad gripped his make, unsure whether to attack or retreat. But Vibhishan, seeing the fear in their eyes, raised his hand in peace and called out, stop. It is me, Vibhishan, brother of Raavan, friend to Ram. Do not fear me. Ram looked up, his grief-stricken eyes slowly registering the voice. Vibhishan, is it truly you? Vibhishan replied, approaching calmly, setting down his make in a sign of peace, yes, Ram. Ram looked up weakly, his eyes filled with sorrow and confusion. He could hear the chaos erupting around him. The Vanar Sena had broken ranks in panic. Cries of fear echoed across the mountain. The mighty warriors, seeing Vibhishan's towering demon form emerging through the dust, mistook him for Indrajit returning to strike again. Ram, despite the pain searing through his limbs, raised his hand slightly and turned to Sugreev. His voice was faint but firm. Sugreev, please calm them. Do not let fear undo us. The battle is not over. Sugreev nodded. At once, Ram. He rushed to the heart of the commotion and called out, Jambavan. The troops are panicking. They must be brought back to their senses. Tell them it is not Indrajit. It is Vibhishan, our ally. Jambavan immediately rose to his task. His voice, deep and commanding, boomed across the field. Stand down, Vanars. Hold your positions. That is not the enemy. That is Vibhishan, son of Pulastya, brother of Raavan and friend of Ram. The cries began to quiet. Confusion turned to recognition. And slowly, the ranks began to reform, a fragile calm returning to the field. Vibhishan, now kneeling beside the wounded brothers, looked deeply distressed. He said, Ram, this was not an ordinary attack. Indrajit has used a weapon immersed with forged from sorcery. This one was dipped in the venom of 1,000 snakes. He paused, then added gravely, these are no ordinary arrows. They are poisoned with the breath of serpent's bone of Kadru, twisted by black magic. No earthly healer can cure this. But there is one who can. Garud, the eternal enemy of serpents. Call him. Only he can draw the venom from your veins. Ram, though weary and bloodied, closed his eyes and whispered a quiet prayer. His heart reached out across the sky, calling for an old friend. And then the winds shifted. The sky above began to swirl with light. A majestic figure appeared with wings outstretched, shimmering with golden radiance. Garud, the great eagle and king of birds, descended like a divine flame from the heavens. As he landed, the very air around him pulsed with energy. The moment his wings touched the battlefield, a wave of warmth swept over the mountain. The poison within Ram and Lakshman stirred and began to flee. The serpents bound the arrows hissed and vanished into the earth, unable to endure Garud's presence. Garud stepped closer and looked upon Ram with kindness. "You called, my friend, and I have come." He extended his wings, covering both Ram and Lakshman. A gentle glow surrounded them, and with every passing second, their pain faded. Their wounds closed, their breath deepened, and the poison was no more. Ram sat up slowly. Ram slowly sat up, now clear-eyed and whole once again. Lakshman stirred beside him, blinking against the light. Ram placed his palms together and bowed his head. "O mighty Garud, you have lifted us from the jaws of death. We are in your debt. How can we repay you?" Garud smiled. "The debt is not yours, Ram. It is I who remember our ancient bond, one that goes beyond this lifetime. One day, I shall speak of it. But for now, know this that Raavan and his kin do not fight with honor. Be cautious. For every step forward, they will answer with deception." He turned to Lakshman. "You, brave one, still have many battles ahead, and your fire is not yet spent." Then, raising his great wings, Garud said, "You will triumph, Ram." With those final words, he took to the skies once more, vanishing into the heavens, leaving behind a battlefield not of sorrow, but of hope reborn. The Vanar Sena erupted in roars of joy. Drums thundered. Conches blared. The warriors gathered around their leaders once again. Ram stood tall. Lakshman readied his bow. The war was far from over, and dharm was once again on its feet. Ram and his council gathered once again, this time not in grief, but in quiet reflection. The battle had revealed much. Indrajit's sorcery, the unexpected venom of serpents, and the panic that gripped the Vanars had been a lesson in preparedness. Ram stood at the center, flanked by Lakshman, Sugreev, Hanuman, Vibhishan, and Jambavan. They formed a circle of leaders of different races, bound together by a common cause. Ram's face was calm, but resolute. He said in a steady voice, "We must learn from what has happened. We were caught unguarded not because we lacked strength, but because we did not expect deceit." Vibhishan nodded. "Raavan and his son do not fight as warriors should. Their path is not of dharm. They strike from behind veils and illusions. We must not underestimate them again." Hanuman's fists tightened. "We will tear down every illusion, every lie they hide behind." But it was Lakshman who spoke next, his tone measured yet urgent. He said, "Brother, so far, we have fought with restraint. We have used our arms, our skill, our courage, but not the full might that rests with us." Ram turned to him and said, "Speak your mind, Lakshman." Lakshman continued, "When we began this journey, sage Vishwamitra entrusted us with divine weapons. Later, sage Agastya blessed us with more divine weapons. Those weapons with celestial powers gifted by the gods themselves. We have not used them, not once." He paused, then added, "I know you seek to keep this war righteous. And so do I. But dharm does not ask us to hold back what is rightfully ours to use. These weapons were given to us to uphold justice, not to let it fall." Ram closed his eyes for a moment. He remembered Vishwamitra's teachings, Agastya's wisdom. The moment those divine weapons had been awakened in his mind, each of them alive, each with purpose, each bound to his vow to protect. When he opened his eyes again, there was fire in them. Ram said, "You are right, Lakshman. This war is not for land. It is for truth. It is for Sita. It is for the path of dharm. And it is time it sees our full strength. He looked at the mountain in the distance, where the sun had begun to rise again. Ram continued, I will not use power for vengeance, but I will use it for justice. From this moment, we will meet their might with our own. We will fight with honor, but we will no longer hold back. Sugreev raised his hand. Then let us fight with all we have. Ram turned to his commanders and said, From this moment, we do not fight with only arms, we will also fight with awareness. He laid out their revised strategy. He explained, Hanuman, Jambavan, you two are among the most spiritually attuned. From now on, you will lead our vanguard against illusions. Any sign of sorcery must be met with your insight. Ram continued, Vibhishan, your knowledge of Lanka is unmatched. You will now serve as our chief advisor on Lankan sorcery and demon warfare. Every tower, every temple, every shrine, anywhere where their priests or magicians may hide must be watched. He continued, Angad, you along with Hanuman, you will lead rotating scout missions. No part of the battlefield must be left unseen. Sugreev, we must create smaller scout units. Constant movement. Constant reporting. No formation should be left blind. The sky must become our second ground. Our Vanars can leap and soar. Let them scan the battlefield from above. Let nothing hide in plain sight. He then called for innovation and said, Use fire. Use light. Hanuman, teach our Vanars to craft torches, barriers, burning marks. Let there be no corner where shadows rule. Jambavan, you create watch groups, shifts, guards around the resting quarters of our wounded and leaders. Ram added, Vibhishan, design symbols, marks or magical seals for our allies. We must never again mistake friends for foe. Finally, Ram raised his voice. We will also create signals, flags, roars, drums, each for a meaning. One for enemy approach, one for magical danger, one for retreat, one for victory, and one for the name of the dharm. Let every sound strike fear in Raavan's heart. The circle stood in awe, not because of the strength being summoned, but because of the clarity with which Ram commanded it. This was not a king who ruled. This was a leader who awakened others. And so, with renewed clarity, Ram and his allies began preparing not just for battle, but for victory. Every general was given command. Every strategy was refined. The divine weapons were invoked within Ram's inner consciousness, not to cause havoc, but to restore balance. It was no longer just a war. It was the unfolding of destiny, where every blow, every arrow, and every roar would now carry not just strength, but the sacred seal of righteousness. The sun rose higher over Suvela mountain, and beneath its golden light, Ram's army stood tall, ready to march, ready to fight, ready to end the darkness.
In this episode, we witnessed illusions rise and then fall before the eyes of truth. We saw Raavan, desperate to shatter Sita's will, resort to the cruelest trick of all, conjuring the lifeless forms of Ram and Lakshman, pierced and broken, and parading them before her sorrowful eyes. It was not an act of war, but of cowardice. And yet, even in that moment of deepest grief, we saw devotion endure. Sita's heart broke, but her soul did not surrender. We saw Trishta, the demoness trusted by Sita, risk her own place in Lanka's cruel court to bring her comfort and truth. In her doubts, in her kindness, we saw the quiet rebellion of conscience. And in her words, hope returned to Sita's trembling heart. We then followed Ram, rising from the grip of poison and illusion, only to find Lakshman still fallen. We heard the raw grief of a brother who believed he had failed, not in battle, but in love. A warrior who could lose a kingdom, but not a brother. His sorrow was not weak. It was the weight of his dharm carried with honesty. And then came Garud, the divine eagle, the ancient friend, the enemy of serpents. Not with vengeance, but with healing. With a flap of his wings, He broke the spell of Indrajit's sorcery and restored the sons of Dashrath to their strength. And with that, the tide shifted once more. But this episode was not just about revival, it was about reckoning. We saw Ram and his council rise again, not in haste, but with new wisdom. We heard Lakshman speak of restraint and righteousness, and how even dharm must wield its full power when truth is under siege. And we saw a strategy that takes form not of brute force, but of clarity, fire, and discipline. In the roar of the Vanars, in the silence of Ram's resolve, in the light of Garud's blessing, we saw that this war would no longer be reactive. It would be righteous and relentless. Join me in the next episode as the battle moves forward with divine fire, sharpened minds, and fearless hearts. The army of Ram no longer marches in hope, it marches in certainty. The war is no longer approaching. Share this podcast with your loved ones and let the timeless lessons of the Ramayana inspire your journey. Though the details of this ancient tale may vary across traditions, its essence reminds us of the enduring power of compassion, courage, and hope in the face of adversity. Until next time, may the light of dharm illuminate your path and fill your heart with peace.